great Zen teacher, founder of the Soto Zen school in Japan. He lived from 1200 to 1253, so a long time ago. And I'm not a historian. I don't study kind of the scholastic side of Buddhist practice, even though there's lots of fun stuff to look at. To me, it's more about practice, which is why I bring this up. And so, he's at some point in his life, and he decides that, he's going to go to China. Where real Chan, really in Chinese, is Zen. And he says, well, I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to learn from a great Chan master, a great Zen master. And so he goes for a handful of years or whatnot, and he comes back after 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. And everybody's excited because Dogen is back, and they think he's going to have some incredible teachings from these great Chan masters. And so they ask him, what did you learn from these great Zen masters? And he says, I've learned that the eyes are horizontal and the nose is vertical. That was all he had to say. After 4 years of studying with some of the greatest Chan masters, early 1215, 1220, 1230. And he added, and be kind. That was what he learned. So you're talking like 1,000 years ago, and all these great Zen teachers, great Zen masters, this 2,500-year-old, history of Buddhism and Buddhist teachings, and everybody getting lost. And if you're all brand new to this, then you'll be lost for a while, and it's okay. But everybody getting lost in a lot of these, teachings, thinking that it's this profound thing. It's not. Our minds make it to be this profound thing. What is this Buddhist thing? Who are those Buddhists? What is Buddhism? This is one of the greatest Zen masters of all time. The Soto Zen school, which still lives today. He's the founder of that, basically surviving other Rinzai and Soto schools of Zen practice, and that was what he had to say. Eyes horizontal, nose vertical. And so, for those of you who are brand new to this Buddhist stuff and meditation stuff, or those who've been at this for a while, really the essence behind this teaching and the meaning behind this teaching is, don't complicate anything. Don't make Buddhism this big, long, drawn-out, complicated thing. Right? In other words, if Buddhism is nothing more than a reflection back at you, don't make your life this big, long, drawn-out, complicated thing. Alright? Simplify things. To me, that's the greatest message of this teaching. That we can get lost forever in our heads of trying to analyze and intellectually understand and figure out things. Or we can just recognize the simplicity of everything. That your life, not my life, not the Buddha's life. Come on in. Don't worry. Yeah. If you can leave your shoes on the rack, that would be perfect. It's all right, man. Thanks. Just simplify things. Simplify your life. Don't worry about what the Buddha did. Don't worry about what your neighbor does. Don't worry about what's happening on the other side of the world right now. Spend time first simplifying your life, your thoughts, your body, your speech, your mind. Right? Take care of your karma. You didn't miss anything. Don't worry.
Okay, I was late already.
That's all right. So I think it's I find humor in that teaching, but I also found it to be very profound. When you wake up every day and you start your day and you have this concept of how you think your day is going to go and what you think you have to accomplish and everything you have to do and how important you think you are, or how important you think you should be, or what you think you have to build or create or accomplish or become based on what everybody thinks and says, what you can do, or what you should do. Just simplify things. One of my best teachers early on said, Jeff, you work so hard to make so much money to buy so many things. If you didn't have so many things, you wouldn't need so much money and you wouldn't need to work so hard. We kill ourselves every single day trying to fit into some construct of the world that we've created in our own heads, when the reality is all you need to be alive is your breath and a little bit of food and some water. Now, are you going to spend the rest of your life just eating a little bit of food and having a little bit of water? Probably not. But could you balance that a little bit? Absolutely. Begin to understand why you struggle so much, wanting and craving and desiring everything to be a certain way. And then come back to just the simple nature of this life could be so beautiful, so simple, so easy. Eyes horizontal, nose vertical. It really can be that simple. But even with that, we want to complicate that. Once you stop trying to change, control, manipulate, fix everything outside of you, and you work on changing your mind and your reaction to the world outside of you, life gets a lot easier. Once you let go of trying to control how you think things are going to be. And most of us have spent our entire lives trying to control everything around us, hoping everything works exactly how we had planned. How's that worked for you so far? Right? We tend to complicate, as I said earlier, life. We complicate our minds. We complicate meditation. We complicate Buddhist practice. We put all these fancy words and phrases and meanings on things. How complicated is it to be kind to people? Everybody understand that concept? We should all try it. It would make life a lot easier for you and everybody else you encounter. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. That's really what this practice is about. Understanding everything we crave, understanding everything we desire, understanding how impermanent everything is, that everything we seek and crave and want and desire we only have for a period of time, and then it fades away and we want something else, something better, something newer, something greater. Right? The Buddha taught very clearly that's why we suffer. We constantly crave and desire and want things other than what we already have. And we want things other than what we really need. We don't even need most of the things we want at all. We have everything in our lives in this very moment to be perfectly happy and peaceful. And yet, most people I spend my time around are absolutely miserable most of their day. Stressed, angry, sad, anxious, depressed. In case any of you ever feel that way. The Buddha called this dukkha, suffering. We experience it a lot on a day-to-day basis. And it's not fun. I don't come into this practice because I'm smart or understand half this stuff. I come into this practice a long time ago because I know what it's like to suffer on a day-to-day basis, and that's no way to live your life. And is it easy to work through all of the crap that you have in your head? No. Is it easy to walk around and be kind to yourself and others all day long? No. But is it extremely beneficial and worth it? Absolutely. Does it take discipline and diligence and hard work? Absolutely. But boy, we sure do have a lot of discipline and diligence for a lot of other things that make us absolutely miserable. I'm just making all this stuff up, so maybe some of it applies to you. For those who did come in late or, right after I started, the one thing I said at the beginning that I just want to touch on now again, but I want to reiterate it for anyone who missed it or those who, just as a reminder, Master Dogen said after 3, 4, 5 years in China, he lived 1200 to 1253 and founded Soto Zen school, and he went to China to learn the deep, true Chan Zen teachings. And when he came back after 4 years, he said, They said, Master, what did you learn? What are these great, deep Chan or Zen? Chan is just the Chinese word for Zen teachings. And he said, eyes horizontal, nose vertical, and be kind. That's really what this boils down to. But in order to be kind, you have to understand what makes you so unkind. A lot of this practice, I find, is exploring the true nature of your own mind, and that's it. That's what this practice is about. For those who are here tonight, or maybe brand new to Buddhism and don't know anything about it, this isn't about learning about something that existed 2,500 years ago. This isn't about learning about some prince who became called a Buddha. This isn't about learning about anything other than your own mind, the true nature of your mind. Because what are you stuck with every single day? Your mind. What makes you happy every single day? Your mind. What makes you miserable every single day? Your mind. So the practice of meditation and the practice of what the Buddha was teaching was to explore the nature of your mind and begin to understand what makes us so unkind and unhealthy and unhappy. Not seeking and craving the things that are going to make you happy. It's a funny thing, because most people get into meditation because they want to be happy. So they're like, well, I'm miserable, I'm stressed out, I'm angry, I'm anxious, or maybe I just have a class, at college to take. But either way, somehow you end up here seeking and craving and hoping there's something that's going to bring a sense of peace and happiness to your life, when the reality is the thing that's going to bring a sense of peace and happiness to your life is already in your life. It's your mind. It's having an appreciation for the simple nature of your breath, which is the only thing that you need to keep you alive. Like I said earlier, a little bit of food, a little bit of water. And everything else in our entire existence, we seek and crave and desire, and we just spend our lives through this whole cycle of work, produce, consume, work, produce, consume, work, produce, consume. If I get this, if I become this, if I am this, then everything will be great. We spend our whole lives chasing that, and then we die. There you have it, folks. Stop chasing, craving, desiring all the things that you think are going to make yourself happy. Spend a day quietly doing nothing. Have a little bit of food, a little bit of water, and see how you feel. Try that once a week, once a month. Drastically alter things you do in your life right now, periodically. And see which one brings you a deeper sense of, satisfaction and enjoyment. The Buddha's teachings were very much against the stream meaning against the way that we are typically, and not just because, it's America today and it was India 2,500 years ago. It's got nothing to do with it. He was raised a prince, so he was raised a very wealthy class, and, relative to how most of the world lives, everybody in this room is raised a very wealthy class, and wealthy class not meaning what we typically would design as a wealthy class. We all in here have enough money to go eat. We have enough money in here to buy a few clothes. We have enough money in here to, pay our bills, some days more so than others. But either way, we're a pretty wealthy bunch here sitting in this room. And yet we always feel we don't have enough. And again, if this doesn't apply to any of you, then I'm sorry for wasting your time. So, find appreciation in breath, simple things. Crave less, desire less, and see if you suffer less. Because that's what the Buddha's teachings really are about. How do you suffer less? And if you suffer less, then what you're left with is a little more enjoyment out of your day. And when you suffer less, trust me, other people will be really happy. Because when you suffer, how do you think that impacts everybody around you? Not so well. We struggle, we're unhappy, then you know who has to deal with our struggles and unhappiness? Every single person we encounter. And they don't like it. So, sorry if you came here thinking you were going to feel all warm and fuzzy because you went to your little meditation class. Not my style. That's what bubble baths are for. And when you don't have a tub. Any questions? Yeah.
Can you explain what you did at the beginning?
At the beginning of?
When you walked into the room.
Oh, yeah. So the easiest way, brief background other than kind of getting into the very specifics for you and everybody. So for 2,500 years, as you know, the Buddhist teachings have been around, right? He was a prince, he lived, he taught for 45 years, he died at 80. Buddhism spread all over the world, you know. And so what you have from there is really what survived today, three major schools of Buddhism, Mahayana, Theravada, and Vajrayana. But without getting into all the specifics of that now, you have three major schools of Buddhism. Each approached Buddhist teachings slightly differently, you know, and I can expand on that at some point if interested. You want a cushion, man? Are you okay? You sure? Because there's cushions here. You're good? Sam, I know you're fine, or you grab one if you want one. And so what you have is basically rituals and customs that go with, you know, in all of these Buddhist schools. And they're all different. And so what I'm doing at the beginning here is really my background is more in the Zen Mahayana school of Buddhism, where I was at in Taiwan. This is what, you know, I was trained, I was taught. And so anytime you go to any Buddhist place anywhere, you'll see, you know, somebody typically, I feel appropriately and respectfully, doing some sort of offering at the beginning of the service, at, you know, the beginning of the what you would all call class, you know. And so the offering specifically, again, in what I was taught, is the first thing you do, and you'll see this predominantly throughout most Buddhist schools, is you begin with what's called the taking refuge, right? And so at the beginning, when I walk in and I have an incense stick as an offering, often in Buddhist practice, you'll see offerings of incense, you'll see offerings of flowers, you'll see offerings of water, offerings of fruit, offerings of rice, you know, all different things. Each of them representing something different. Incense represents impermanence, right? Just like us, we've been born, we've been lit, right? We're burning. And our life will someday become ash, just like that incense stick. So every time you offer incense, it's a reminder that, man, my life is like this burning stick of incense. And every moment that passes, I'm one moment closer to being dead. I mean, again, I hate to be so direct, but that's the reality. And so if I'm one moment closer to death every moment, why would I waste any moments being angry and sad and miserable? Because every moment that I waste being angry and sad and miserable, I'm missing an opportunity to find something that's beautiful in life, something that's beautiful that is around me, you know? So every piece of offering has a meaning. Incense is impermanence, fruit also impermanence, flowers also impermanence, right? Everything is beautiful and pretty and then, you know, slowly dies away. So for me, a simple incense offering, and then what we do is called taking refuge, right? And this is, you know, formally or informally done in various ways, but the idea behind taking refuge, right? The word refuge, right? And often when I ask what does it mean, comfort, safety, protection, the word refuge means different things to different people. But so the refuge in the Triple Gems the Buddha taught is that we take refuge. The first one is the Buddha, right? So you see me offer incense, you see me bow. This is what I was taught, right? In a kind of an Asian culture, right? If this were in Taiwan right now, or, you know, Japan right now, wherever it might be, or you're in a kind of local cultural temple, everybody would be bowing and offering in that manner, right? We started this temple 8 years ago downtown called the Dharma Bum Temple to introduce Buddhist practice to people without a lot of that heavy cultural stuff, right? The reality is if we had everybody come in here and bow and chant and wear robes, trust me, most of you wouldn't be here right now, right? So I do that because that's important for me as a practitioner. You know, I feel that I'm about to begin my practice, right? This is my practice, right? I'm sitting in front of all of you looking at me thinking, I know what the heck I'm doing. And I'm supposed to share the Dharma, which is to be able to attempt to share the Dharma is an extremely humbling and honored, experience. And so the least I can do is begin with my formal refuge practice. So the first is taking refuge in the Buddha, not him as a god or an idol or worshiping him because he died, just like everybody else, right? But we take refuge in the Buddha nature that's within all of us, bodhicitta, right? The Buddha was a human being. He lived, he ate, he went to the bathroom. We live, we eat, we go to the bathroom. He enlightened. He understood why he suffered, and he removed himself from a world of suffering. We too can understand why we suffer and remove ourselves from a world of suffering in our minds. So we take refuge in the Buddha nature, right? Symbolic of what he was and who he was and what he taught. And then we take refuge in the Dharma as the second thing. The Dharma is the teachings. It's often translated as the truth, and it's not like the truth as many of us like ultimate truth, but in a way it is the ultimate truth. It's the true nature of reality, which is beyond any sort of definition or labels or judgments. It's just things as they are. And so the Dharma is called basically the teachings. Everything he taught for 45 years that was eventually written down is called the Dharma. So we take refuge in the Dharma, finding safety, comfort, protection in these teachings, because they teach us that the only thing that causes our suffering is our own crazy minds. And if we learn to take care of our own minds, then we can find comfort in that. And then we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of practitioners. And many people have maybe been on the journey for a while. You can sit at home and read books and stare at a wall for 7 years, but if you don't have a community of people to practice with and learn from, you're missing the point. We engage in the world with people. So you have to learn to bring this practice into your life. So what if you can sit back here an hour a week and get all calm and quiet and peaceful? If the moment you walk outside, you go get your boba, you're pissed off at the first person who crosses your path. What good was this? The problems in your lives are not back here, folks. This ain't going to do much for you unless you learn to translate this into your day-to-day life out there. That's where the chaos is, that we have to learn to get quiet and peaceful, and that's what this practice is about. So we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of people we sit with. Because for me, I would just be staring at a wall and talking to myself if you weren't all here, so, which I've done before. So that's, And again, I always encourage people to go. There's a lot of Buddhist temples in San Diego, different cultural temples, and they're fun to just get lost in a different language and watch the bowing and the chanting of the robes and the monks and nuns and everybody. It's a really beautiful, beautiful practice. And it's typically in a language you won't understand, which is also the greatest experience, because if it's in another language, what does that mean?
You can't interpret it.
You can't interpret it. You can't understand it.
You can't judge it.
You can't judge it. I mean, you probably still could, but you know what I mean?
All you can do is experience
You
it.
just experience it, and that's really what this practice is about, is not judging anything, but experiencing it. You don't know what you're saying, so you just experience it, and that's really a beautiful thing. Because what we spend most of our days doing is analyzing, judging, even right now. Oh, you're listening to me, do you like what I say? Do you not like what I say? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm crazy? That's what we kind of process through. And that in itself is the reason that we struggle, as opposed to just experiencing it, being present with it, and allowing the mind to just settle for a few moments. So, yeah.
You actually answered my question.
Great.
So.
Perfect.
Well, actually, let me kind of spin off a little bit on
Yes.
that. So when you're giving offerings,
Yes.
you're not actually giving offerings in the sense of making an offering to a god. You're rather offering something to an idea, something that we can aspire to.
Yeah, it's a symbolic gesture. The Buddha was not a god, as you know. The Buddha's teachings were not about a belief in a god or not in a god. He was asked, it was either 12 or 14 questions that he wouldn't answer. And, this is back in India at that time, where you had, what he was raised in was a Hindu way of life. And so you had thousands of gods and goddesses. That's what existed in India 2,500 years ago. So even this term and idea of God back then, at the time of the Buddha, when he was teaching, is very different from, the concept that we might have today in a Western society of the word God. And so when he was asked about gods back then, he said, look, if you believe in God, you believe in God. If you don't believe in gods and goddesses, you don't believe in gods and goddesses. But ultimately, that's completely irrelevant. All that matters is your karma, meaning what do you think, what do you say, and what do you do? So this belief in the gods or goddesses in India at that time, you could have a belief in, Shiva and Vishnu and Brahma and all that, but then go out and kill people. So really what matters is, how do you act? How do you behave? Right? What's your moral responsibility and behavior throughout your day? That's what the Buddha wanted people to focus on. He wasn't confirming or denying, anything. And so to me, I think that still translates today to Buddhism. Somebody walked in earlier, and I just said to somebody earlier, I said, the two things I never talk about are religion and politics. I'm not concerned with either of those. All I'm concerned with is, what is the nature of my mind? What do I think? What do I say? And what do I do? And how do I treat people? That's all that matters. And so the offering, that's exactly it. It's a symbolic gesture of, wow, there was a person, a human being, who lived, bless you, and figured out how to stop suffering.
It's really the equivalent of, having a moment of silence for someone that did something great. Right? I mean,
I don't know.
a gesture of respect.
I would stop trying to figure it out, and I would, if at any point in time you actually want to make offerings, do it, and then whatever that means for you, that's what it will be, as opposed to trying to put some concrete answer around what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know when I was first taught to, do offerings and things like that, I was just doing it because everybody else was doing it. And, you're sitting there making the offering and you're reciting whatever you're reciting, and all you're thinking about is, am I doing this the right way? Am I holding the incense high enough? Is it burned enough? Have I put it in the right place in the incense burner? Is it facing this way? So at the beginning you kind of get wrapped up in all that crap. And then you realize that it's what's in your mind and in your heart that matters during that moment. So for me to kind of say exactly what it is, and if you asked 100 people who make offerings, they'll give you 100 different answers.
No boxes.
No boxes, no constructs, no definitive answers. Just views and opinions, all of which are completely wrong. So, other questions, thoughts, comments on that, or anything else? Yeah.
I have a question. So if you're new to your meditation sessions,
yes.
How does it work with what you decide to talk about each week?
Myself personally here?
Yeah.
So I usually come in with some idea of what I'm going to say at the beginning, and I'd say half the time I actually say it and half the time I don't. Sometimes because it just doesn't fit anymore, sometimes because I simply forgot what it was. And typically I just go off of what people ask. People come in really more with, there's a heavier sense of what people want to know versus maybe what I want to tell them, and I'd much rather address questions in a way of what people are curious about. So people always, I've been doing this for years, and people always say, is it the same? It's different every single time, because you asked that question today. That question has never been asked, so I've never given this response. Does that make sense? And I tend to typically, throughout what we do is really base everything on the core teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the suffering, the cause, the ending, and the path, the Eightfold Path, the six paramitas, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentrations, wisdom. So regardless of what questions are asked, I always do my best to steer it back to the core teachings of the Buddha, which fall into any other, or really fall into all schools of Buddhism. Because most people who end up here, some of you have been practicing at this for years, and some of you are like brand new day one. And Buddhism can be overwhelming with a lot of phrases and schools and cultures and languages and all that kind of stuff. But the core teachings of the Buddha throughout all those lineages and traditions are the same, Yeah. And I'm not much of a planner, so it's not like I spend 3 hours preparing, and it's not because I don't care. I care very deeply. I just know that what I might want to say might be completely, totally off from what at that moment really should be said. Yeah.
Just wanted to say too, someone who's been coming here for a couple of years on and off now, even though there are some elements that are repeated, that's actually a good thing, because this stuff, when you go out there in the real world, it escapes you. And even if you think you've heard it 1,000 times, you forget. And in the moment, it's really hard to kind of keep it in mind. Mm-hmm. So, just coming back here and, again, hearing some of the same stuff you think you may already know, it's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Somebody said a couple years ago, it was just someone else, they said, are you ever going to stop teaching the Four Noble Truths? That was the Buddha's first teaching. Life is suffering, and there's the cause, greed, anger, ignorance, and there's the third truth, which is the cessation of suffering, liberation, nirvana, and then there's the fourth, which is the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, just karma. So this one guy asked a few years ago, to somebody else, different down at the temple, said, are you ever going to stop doing the Four Noble Truths? So when this was shared back to me, it was like, if you ever feel that you've heard the Four Noble Truths too much, then you really don't understand at all what the Four Noble Truths are about. Because ultimately what you should realize, I feel, as a practitioner, is that not only, as you're saying, are you constantly being challenged every single day, with being kind. I mean, be kind. I could stand behind you all day long and whisper in your ear, be kind, be kind, be kind, and you would still have a hard time being kind, It's just difficult. But the reality is that ultimately this practice to me isn't even about us anymore. So it's not even about, well, how is this going to make my life better? As long as you still approach this, again, whether you're day one or 10 years in, as long as you still approach this as how is this going to make my life better, there's an element to these teachings that you're missing.
Yeah.
This practice is not for you to make your life better. That's a lot of me, 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 me. My life sucks, I'm miserable, I need to be better. Why is it all about you? Why can't this practice be about making life better for others? And to me, that's what the Four Noble Truths are really about. So once you feel like you've heard the Four Noble Truths or any fundamental Buddhist teaching too many times, then at least shift and think, okay, I wouldn't believe you anyways as far as getting it, but as long as you think you get it, then realize, okay, well, if I get it, really get it, then I should really be doing all this stuff for other people anyways. And I should be continuing to help other people anyways. Not like, I often get asked, when's the advanced teaching? Because I've been calling this Intro to Buddhism for years, and as long as I'm alive another 40 years, I'll still be doing the same darn thing 40 years from now. And it'll still be called Intro to Buddhism. And we still won't be able to go a day without, getting angry at something. This stuff it's a practice. It is a simple practice. Other questions? Yeah.
What happens at the end of the Eightfold Path?
How familiar are you with the Eightfold Path?
I just learned it in college right now.
Okay.
I was wondering.
So there's a couple ways I can approach that question, but it's not like school where, I don't mean it like that, it's not like school where we've gone through kindergarten and now we're into first grade. And, we passed all our, 2 plus 2 and now we're going to second grade. The Eightfold Path is not this thing where like you graduate and then you're done, You'll be faced your entire life with opportunities to be kind or not be kind. You'll be faced your entire life with opportunities to be greedy or not be greedy. You'll be faced your entire life with moments of anger or compassion. And so it's not like you complete this and you get a little checkbox and it says you're done. It never happens, right? As long as you are alive and breathing, right? And even if you look at the Eightfold Path, correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, right? So the way you ask the question is what happens when you're done with the 8th step, right? You call me when you can hold your focus on nothing but your breath for 10 seconds. And I mean nothing but your breath. Breath in, breath out, count 1. Breath in, breath out, count 2. Breath in, breath out. Oh wait, I'm on 3. Well, there you go. You lost focus. Come back to the breath. Right? And if you are lucky enough to get to 10, which might take you about 30 years, then once you're done, do the same thing, but visualize the numbers being drawn. Breath in, breath out, 1. Breath in, breath out, 2. Breath in, breath out, 3. Do that to 10. And then if you get through that, then visualize the numbers in a color. And then if you get through that, visualize the number in a color expanding. Right? Concentration. Right? Most of us can't even pay attention to anything for more than 30 seconds. Try having conversations with people and actually look at them. Right? Concentration, focus, attention. Try driving in your car without picking up your phone every 30 seconds or 3 seconds, right? Try brushing your teeth while just brushing your teeth, right? Try doing and this is a single-minded focus. Again, kind of the Zen word, single-minded focus. Just focus and pay attention, right? Concentration. You'll spend your entire life practicing this. So the Eightfold Path is not something that like you've completed it and then you're on to the next level. It doesn't work that way. And I know when this stuff is taught kind of through an education, like through the university setting, it's taught very, systematically. And so it can come across as if it's like, well, I've got 1 through 8, I'm done. There is no done, in the Buddhist teachings. The other side, the other way to look at it is practice those 8 things and answer that question on your own. But let me just make one comment on why with this concentration thing, right? Anyone in here get sad, angry, stressed, depressed, anxious? Do you know why that is, right? The reason that you experience these emotions of stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression is because you have a very untrained, unconcentrated, I don't even know if that's a word, mind, right? Because when our mind goes to the past, I'm just sitting here working, I'm, chopping carrots, and I'm thinking about what happened 10 years ago. So I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm depressed. I'm back to chopping carrots. Now I'm worried about, am I going to be done fast enough? What am I going to do tomorrow? And now my mind is thinking about the future. So I'm stressed out, I'm anxious. How am I going to get through college? What am I going to do afterwards? How am I going to blah, blah, blah? Right? How much time do you spend there? When the reality is the only thing you're doing right now is sitting right here and breathing. That's it. So if you can do that every moment of your entire life, then you can really look at what's next. But we suffer because of an untrained mind. So that's why the practice of meditation is so important. So when you go through your day and someone yells at you, what's our typical reaction when somebody yells at us? I know not you, but just play along here. We get mad and we yell back, right? What if we actually didn't get mad and didn't yell back? That would be mind-blowing. What if somebody was screaming at us and we just understood that they're screaming because they're suffering and have compassion for them because they're screaming, as opposed to making it all about me? Well, I don't want to be yelled at. I deserve this, I deserve that, I shouldn't get this, I shouldn't get that. Why are they saying this? Why are they saying that? They're yelling because they're suffering. That's where compassion comes from. Is the understanding that anytime anyone is yelling or screaming or saying stuff that you don't like, they're suffering. And if you don't believe me, just look at how you feel when you yell or scream at somebody. You're suffering. And so an untrained mind wanders to ways of thinking about how we want to be and how we think the world should work and how we think people should treat us and what we think we expect and deserve. That's not what the Buddha was talking about. The Buddha was concerned with not what you expect and deserve, but how can you minimize and remove your suffering. And a trained mind will do that. Is this easy? Nope. Is this a daily practice for the rest of your life? Yes. Will one die still practicing? Absolutely. So, yeah, hope that helps. None of this stuff should be set as like goals. It's not like, okay, well, I'm going to achieve Nirvana by Tuesday of next week. As long as you're trying to achieve something and gain something and attain something, you're craving and clinging to and attaching to something. And then you miss it. You're already in Nirvana right now. And you're already in samsara right now. Suffering and liberation is right now. Because it's all in your mind. That's it. It's Groundhog Day, the movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's getting out of Groundhog Day. Any other kind of final questions before we wrap up here?
Jeff?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
there's nothing that you're striving for, then what are there to live for?
What do you think there is to live for?
Well, my thinking is you make a better life for others who come after you.
So the bodhisattva is enlightened being, right? And it's one of the kind of paths of Buddhism, Buddhist teachings within the Mahayana school. And the bodhisattva vow, said differently in different ways, but in essence is to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, right? So the vow on the bodhisattva path and the bodhisattva practice is to, in essence, live for the benefit of everybody. In other words, that the way that it was said, and I know you don't necessarily mean it this way, but I don't think you do, but just for clarification of others, this idea of there's nothing to live for is very different from like, well, I'm living for, my dream house and my dream job and my dream family, right? There's a lot of beautiful things to experience in this life, right? But if you can understand that this path and this practice and this life that we've been given isn't all about us, and that we can make it about making life beautiful for everybody around us. To me, what more purpose is there than that? You know? That's the most beautiful thing in the world. Because even if, you wake up tomorrow and you're like, yes, I am a fully realized, enlightened being. Well, you might be right now. I don't mean to insult you and all. But then you would realize, okay, well, what about this dude over here? What about this girl over here? What about this family member? What about this stranger? What about those people over there? They're suffering. So what can I do to help them alleviate their suffering? That to me is the most beautiful practice. It's the most important practice, I feel. Because it removes the one thing that the Buddha said is the cause of the suffering. Which is what? Self. Right? So when you remove that idea of what is there to live for me, and you realize that the purpose of this entire practice, and again, if you look, and it's too late to get into the details of this now, but I'll touch on it briefly. If you look at really kind of the details of the Buddha's teachings, the fact that we're all born and we're all here and we're all human means that we're in the cycle of birth and rebirth, and that we're going to experience suffering, and that we're not fully enlightened beings right here, right now. So we work through our own karma, our own crap, our own stuff. But to me, the fast pass through that is to stop worrying about me so much and to do what you can to benefit others. Also knowing that what you think you are doing, that you think is benefiting others, you really have no idea if you're benefiting them at all. Yeah, and then we'll close.
Quick question.
Because I'm sure that clarified everything for everybody.
The rebirth and going through.
Quick question,
cycle,
rebirth.
Right? No.
I knew I shouldn't have said that.
Is there an end? I mean, is it?
The end is Nirvana.
Everybody will get to Nirvana if they go.
Don't even worry about it.
Okay.
It's a complete waste of your time, in my ignorant opinion.
Okay.
The only way to liberate from the word Nirvana. Does anyone know what the word Nirvana means other than the really cool rock band?
Complete nothingness?
No. Is that what your professor taught you?
Well, complete nothingness. She told me it was nothing.
No. Mm-mm.
Extinction?
Extinguish. Yes. It's to extinguish is the word Nirvana, right? Think of a candle, right? You have a candle, you have a flame, you build a flame out. That's Nirvana. The flame has been extinguished. Right? I'm not going to sit here and define what that means because you can't put it into words. But the literal English translation of the word nirvana is to extinguish. And it's said that the Buddha in his last life died. It's called nirvana with no remainder, meaning that was his last life. He wasn't. So the Buddha entered into what's called parinirvana, no rebirth. Right? I don't know about you or anybody else, but I'm pretty darn sure I got a long way to go. And I'm not worried about entering into nirvana by the time I hit, 95 years old so I can be done. I'm pretty much worried about what do I think and say and do today. Because the only way that I'm getting, to free myself from the cycle of birth and death is by what I do today, right now. And that's a huge mistake people often make when they learn about Buddhism. It's like, well, how am I going to get to enlightenment? How am I going to enter into nirvana? It's not like getting on the 5 freeway and going to Del Mar. Just get on the 5 freeway and drive without being angry at somebody. Start there. Is that not hard enough? It is. Try taking the bus without being annoyed. Just try those simple things. Because ultimately nirvana and liberation is a state of mind anyways. It's not a physical destination. Because when you blow out the flame, where did the flame go? It's not a physical destination. It's not like packing your bags and heading to Florida. Although I'm sure Florida's nice. So I'm going to close on that note before we get way too carried away into other meaningless stuff like liberation and nirvana. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Dama's mother during her time of rebirth, and to Dama, Tom, Orion during their time of suffering.